It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Pat Carey, Chief Executive Officer of Wallace Carey, Canada's largest independent distributor. Pat isn't just another business owner, he's a walking example of the Canadian entrepreneurial spirit. As a third-generation CEO of Wallace Carey, he is now leading the evolution of this national 100-year success story. Though Pat only officially took on the role of CEO back in 2018, he jokes that he joined the company when he was born in the mid-70s. Headquartered in Calgary, Wallace Carey's over 500 team members serve more than 7,000 customer locations through their expansive distribution network, which services every postal code in Canada. Pat is a graduate of Acadia University and an active member of numerous industry organizations and trade groups, including the Young Presidents Organization, and a lifelong volunteer with community events like the Calgary Stampede. Pat Carey, welcome into the Corner Office.
Great to be here. Look forward to our chat.
Oh, this is terrific. Well, great to have you here. And I guess first and foremost, what part of the world did we catch you in? You know, I know you're quite an outdoorsman and you've been out of Calgary for years, but you mentioned something about being up in a cabin somewhere. So I'm curious, what part of the world are you in today?
I'm actually in a small town called Invermere, and it's in BC, so just west of Alberta.
Okay. Yeah, great. And is that a family home, a location, or is it just a vacation spot, or just getting out in the woods for a bit?
Well, it's actually another generational story. My wife's grandfather owned this land back in the 50s, and we were finally able to build a bit of a cabin for my mother-in-law, and so she lives here full time and lets us come and vacation and get away from the city. So.
I love it. Well, let's start with the family, and you know, we always like to kind of hear a little bit about the early years. Pat, you know, tell us where you grew up and what your early family life was like. I know you've been in a third generation business, as we said in the intro, and you know, tell us where that all happened. Mother, father, siblings.
Well, it started with my grandfather, and he was originally from Manitoba, both grandma and grandpa on my dad's side. And my mom's side's from Ontario. And anyway, grandma and grandpa moved to Calgary, and my father and mother met in Calgary as well. I was born in Calgary.
You grew up in Calgary. In the city, or were you out in the country, or where were you living?
Right in the city, actually, a community called Silver Springs. So four boys and a girl.
Where are you in the pecking order?
I'm the dreaded middle child. So
the one who can't be trusted, right? And the black sheep, as we refer to it in our family.
As my brothers and sisters would say, and my wife, I definitely have middle child syndrome. So we joke about that over the years.
I love it. And mom and dad. So did dad go right into the family business and mom, support and bring up the kids? What was that like?
Yeah, it was a little more traditional, like you said. So
Yeah.
Dad joined the business in the early 70s, and
Did he have a career before that, or was it always expected he'd go into it?
yeah, he moved to Toronto and had a career with a company called Robert Simpson and sold shoes, your typical shoe salesman, and kind of honed his craft of sales, and it's actually, so Dad passed away a few years ago, and I was able to kind of go through the archives and see the letter that my father wrote to my grandfather, basically requesting or not demanding, but asking to join the family business.
Wow.
And Grandpa wasn't as receptive as I think Dad hoped, and basically said, you got to go make your mistakes elsewhere before you join the family business.
Smart advice.
Yeah. And so now I know why I was faced with the same challenge when I asked to join the family business.
Now, was it logistics and distribution at that time too? Have you been pretty much in the same business for these generations?
Back in the early start of the career, it was more of a general store type. And,
right. Retail.
When you think of Western Canada, we started selling to the small towns outside of Calgary, and then you had one truck, two trucks, and eventually we kind of stuck with our knitting of wholesale and distribution and let the experts at retail be the experts at retail.
Figure that out. Yeah. But you went away to school, and was that something that your brothers and sisters did, and was it expected of you to go and get a degree?
It was never expected. Actually, out of high school, I kind of turned to the mountains and became what I call a ski bum, and so I went and became a ski patroller up at a local hill. And my brother and I, two older brothers and myself, we had a landscape company in Invermere where we were.
Cool.
It's cottage country, cabin country, and so we're cutting grass for the for the families that would go back to Calgary during the week, and it turned into
summer homes mostly, right, or weekend homes.
Exactly, and so that business kind of flourished, but it was only big enough to support one of us, and so my brother and I pulled straws, and I pulled the short straws, so I went back to school, and my sister and I actually went to the same school at Katie University out east in Nova Scotia. Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Were you a good student in secondary school before going into college? Was that's something that you focused a lot of time on, or?
I would say I had a lot of fun in school. I enjoyed rugby and the social side that rugby brings, but I got through. I wouldn't say I excelled, but I got through. So
and then went on to obviously Arcadia. You'd mentioned the lawn mowing business. Was there other entrepreneurial things that you did as a kid growing up?
Yep, the lawn maintenance was kind of one of the biggest things, and it's still going today. And my
really. So your brother's still running it?
My brother still runs it in Invermere. It's called MacNeil Mowing, and they have quite a business in the valley, and so that was the key entrepreneurial thing that got us started, and kind of got our passion for starting business once we got into the family business. So,
love that. Yeah. What were the types of things that you remember as a kid growing up that were, either inspirational from older brothers and sisters or your parents, or, maybe a coach, or, rugby, I know, was a big part of your life. Any things that you remember that kind of helped you during those days in terms of, persevering and moving forward?
You know what? I think I go back to the battles. My older brother Mike, and then the next oldest is Neil. The I wouldn't say battles, but the challenges we had working together as teenagers, and the importance of the friendship that we developed. Yeah, you could disagree and have challenges about how the work gets done, but at the end of the day, we're family, and no matter what the complication is, you gotta stick together, and I think that's what really started to help me once I started to work with Dad in the business, and that mantra that we want the same objective, we just may not agree on how to get there. So
yeah. How are you all just a couple of years apart, your siblings?
Well, there's 5 of us, and we're almost exactly 10 years from the oldest to the youngest.
Yeah. It's about 2 years apart. Yeah. Awesome. And so being the middle child, I don't suppose it was, obvious that you'd be the heir apparent to the company, and you have become that. Were there other issues that kind of went into that, or did the other siblings not join the company, or, how did you kind of work through that? Because there was a lot of competition in that household.
Yeah, there definitely was. Dad did a very good job of not setting expectations that Mom and Dad did a good job not setting expectations that anybody had to join the family business, and they very much
it was optional, huh? They did kind of give you that freedom.
They encouraged us to go do other things. They almost pushed us away from the family business, and I had to push quite hard to get Dad to concede and allow us to join the business. He put my wife and I, or girlfriend at the time, but wife today, he put us through a lot of dinner conversations and tough chats of what joining a family business is all about, and it can be perceived as positive or negative, but in hindsight, I think it's good to have those conversations ahead of time rather than once you're in the business and can't turn back kind of thing. So.
Absolutely. And did you go in right away, or did you do a couple of things coming out of Arcadia that was outside the family walls, so to speak?
Yeah, so I graduated Acadia in 2003, and I worked for one of the manufacturers in the industry for a little bit. Okay. And I had a manager that knew our family business in Calgary and understood kind of the history. And I moved up that organization quite quickly. And one day he came to me and said, Pat, Bill Lockery was his name. He said, Pat, due to your family business, and since we sell to your family business and to your family business's competitors, you've kind of plateaued here. And
interesting.
At the time, I didn't agree or understand why you would say that to me. But when I look back after the years, it was probably the kick in the butt that I needed to make the leap into the family business.
Yeah. So that's when you made that transition. And I know you came in as a vice president. Did you have a certain area of the business that you started in when you first came into?
I actually didn't come in as vice president. I came in as just in the warehouse. And
oh, right, really? Wow. So he started you right down at the bottom.
Yeah. And
thanks, Dad.
Yeah. And so I worked out. My wife and I were based in Calgary, and travel was going to be a major part of the family business.
Of course.
And so Dad sent me out to Vancouver for 6 months, and so I left on Monday, came back on Friday, and my wife and I got used to traveling and being apart, and I worked in the warehouse from 6 till 2, and then had some management meetings from 2 till kind of 6, and so I was in a position where I started on the shop floor and worked my way through each job in the warehouse so that I could have that foundation for the future.
Do you remember the first time you started managing people, Pat?
The first time I managed people, obviously, working with the manufacturers, I was working with people. At the landscape business in Invermere, we had 3 or 4 guys at various times that worked for us.
Oh, okay. Really? Wait, even back then? Wow.
Yeah. And but in Wallace and Carey, the first time was when I took an operations role for Western Canada.
Yeah.
And obviously, in a family business, there's you deal with some of the stigma. Is he the right person?
Be kind of tough sometimes. Yeah. And you're the 3rd generation. So, daddy's boy coming in. Did you get some pushback? And, what were some of those early challenges you had in leadership?
You know what? We have a lot of teammates that have been with us for a long time. And
well, probably some family lineages there too, I imagine, right? Did you hire sons and daughters of former employees and so forth?
Well, if you go through our organizations, there's a lot of father-son. There's husbands and wives that met within the business. So we do have a strong culture of fostering family, and so I would say, there was some difficult times, but in the majority, the teammates were quite supportive and understood the succession plan and those types of things. But Dad was definitely not one to hand it to anybody. And,
that's right. You had to earn your keep.
Yeah. So they knew that my father would make it as difficult as he could. So
they could just tease you a little bit, right? They wouldn't have to jab you too hard.
They got to sit back and watch the show. So
Oh gosh, that's great. So how long were you out in Western Canada then? So was that first job take you out there for some time?
I was out there for about 6 months, and my wife and I actually looked at moving to Vancouver, and we decided that since my job I would be on the road quite a bit anyway, that her family and my family were closer to Calgary, and so it made sense for us to set up home base in Calgary, and I could travel from wherever. So at that time, I think that was 04, 05, we decided to make Calgary home base close to Invermere.
So the business wasn't based in Calgary then originally? Wallace Carey.
Yes, it was originally based in Calgary, and in the early 2000s, we had warehouses across the country. So I went to Vancouver to work in the Vancouver warehouse. And
got it. And then you moved back.
And then we moved back. So
and that's been the headquarters since then. Good. And then when you came back, before you obviously moved into the CEO role, which I understand was fairly recent. It was about 2-3 years ago, right? I mean, you took over as president, I think, back in 2012, but you obviously had several jobs over that 10-year period. Did you kind of come up through a specific area of the company? Did Dad have you, train in some different, responsibilities? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so my business background was finance, personal finance, not accounting or anything, but a BCom from Acadia. So I was strong on the sales and relationship side of the business, and so I really took took ownership of the sales opportunities within Wallace and Carey, and worked closely with the corporate team in Calgary through kind of 05, 06, and we had quite a bit of success from 2007 to about 2012, gaining big corporate clients from our competition. And so I would say I cut my teeth on
doing that,
understanding what goes into gaining those business, how to price them, how to prepare for them. When we win an account, it can be significantly large account with 600-700 deliveries across the country and big scale of products. And so to transition that business does not happen overnight. And you've got to engage all parts of the team to make it successful. So we had 3 or 4 opportunities during the 2006 to 2012 timeframe to gain business. And I would say that success gave me the confidence and the comfort level to understand each piece of the business and work with everybody throughout the organization.
And did the business transform a bit during that period, Pat? In other words, when you're going out and getting new clients, were you looking for new verticals and going into new, areas that you had not competed with in before as a company?
Yeah. When I became vice president, Dad and I had a bit of an analogy. We called it the 80-20 rule. And when I joined the business, we had 80% of our assets taking 80% of our time. And we wanted to diversify our business a little bit to have 80% of our assets taking 20% of our time.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we diversified Carey Management Inc., which is the holding company that owns Wallace and Carey. We got into the garden center business. We obviously collected some real estate over the years into the broker side of the business and a number of different areas that started to complement Wallace and Carey. And Carey Management Inc. became that holding company that was over top of those 4 or 5 different operating codes. And that gave us a whole bunch of new challenges of centralized management or service-based management versus each business running on their own. And we kind of went back and forth as we figured out what was best for our organization.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And we kind of went over this a little bit, but did some of your siblings also come into the business, and are they still involved today, or how did that kind of shake out over time as you climbed the ladder, so to speak?
Yeah, we had various times where different brothers and sisters and family were in the business.
Right.
My dad and my uncle worked together for 20 plus years until my uncle retired. And
Got it. Were some of his kids involved, some of your cousins involved in the business too?
My cousin joined the business. He was with us for almost 10 plus years as well. And so he went back into the manufacturing side and still in the industry today, but not with the business. And two of my brothers had stints with the organization. Yeah. We got into the golf business, and I would say the golf business isn't the most profitable business in Canada. and so my little brother, Dan, he worked in the business and managed that side of the business until we sold out of that industry. Right. And then my oldest brother works with us from an IT consulting perspective. Right. And just recently, my brother-in-law joined the business over the last 12 months.
Your sister's husband.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, good. And he's come in in a senior executive role or in a management role, or did you start him in the warehouse?
We started him in the warehouse.
Really? And, oh my gosh, I love it. Hey, that's the way to do it.
And you know what? He was excited. He said, you know what? That's a family business. You got to start and learn from the ground floor up. So actually, Jay and I, we met playing rugby at school. So we've got obviously a history and I said, you got to go through the same orientation that I went through.
That's right.
And I think it pays off in the long run.
Now, did Dad step down when you took over as CEO, or did he pass about that time? What was the kind of seminal event in 19 when you took over?
So in 2018, Dad passed away suddenly.
Oh, okay. Sorry to hear that.
So at the time, I was president, and obviously he was CEO. So that event caused the succession plan, and
speed it up or whatever. Yeah. How was he? Was he a fairly young man at the time? I mean, I know was he thinking about retirement then, or
no? Dad,
was it kind of a sudden occurrence? Yeah.
Dad never thought of retirement.
In a family business, you rarely do, right? Yeah.
I think his line was, my brothers and sisters may correct me, but his line was, I wake up every day and do exactly what I want to. Why would I retire? And
you know what? I love that philosophy. That's mine as well.
So he retired when he passed away, and so he died quite suddenly. He was only 70, and
but you had talked about succession with him, I presume. Right.
You know what? Dad did a hell of a job. We had a great resource in Dave Blom and the team at Wallace and Carey. Dave Blom is a family enterprise company, Desiderata, that we work with.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And he started working with us in early 2000s, and he helped guide the conversation, and another shout out to Jackie Belrose that helped guide the conversation as we went through that succession plan, and Dad did a very good job of communicating to his kids of what that would look like. When he passed away suddenly, everybody knew kind of what was going to happen. Obviously, an emotionally charged situation, and knowing kind of the steps that we were going to take helped simplify it or make it run smoother. And I always tell my brothers and sisters and mom, I said, we still all love each other and talk to each other. And so that's the sign of a good succession plan.
I was going to say that's a blessing and, amazing in and of itself, because, families have gone through far lesser things with, much greater dissension, I'm sure. Well, that's great. Well,
I was told when we went through that majority of families, this causes family breakups.
Huge rifts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Huge rifts. Yeah. Well, it sounded like he gave it some good thought. And God bless him for doing so, because, that a lot of times that doesn't happen, and even with CEO owners, second, third, fourth generation, they can be in their 70s and 80s, and they still don't want to relinquish control, and
exactly
things are left in a bit of disarray. So I'm glad to hear that. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of maybe your leadership style, Pat. I mean, you've obviously been at the company now for almost your entire career, a few years outside after college. How has it evolved over time? What have you learned in running a family business and taking over from your dad now these last couple of years? And how would you say that your leadership style has evolved over that time?
Yeah, it's a great topic and a great question. And I think the only I can describe it a little bit, but the only true way to answer that is to ask the teammates and get that positive feedback or negative, so that we can improve and adjust. And
all right, so time out here now. There's a lot of Wallace and Carey folks listening to this now. We're recording this in early mid-April now, or no, March. Where are we? And I think this is probably going to come out in May sometime. So open invitation, right? Pat's asking for feedback, but I won't let you off the hook. What's your assessment? Do you think that you're managing differently today? And if so, what does that look like versus, when you first came into the company? And, you probably had warehouse staff that were maybe double your age, right, that you worked with, and folks that had been around there a while, and, the teasing and prodding.
Yeah, I think from my my leadership style, I want to empower. I want to encourage teammates to take responsibility, own the opportunity themselves, and guide their own departments and areas of responsibility. I can't be making all the decisions. Everywhere. And our teammates, we don't say staff or employees, but our teammates know their areas of responsibility better than we ever will. And I think as we can push responsibility down into the organization, we can have more success and be more nimble. So the first thing I did in 2018 was look for an outside president. And it was the first time ever in the ownership of that the Carey family's owned Wallace and Carey, is the first time ever that we had an outside non-Carey president.
Wow. Now, did you use a recruiter for that? Did you go through friends and family? How did you identify that president? Because that's a tough job.
You know what? It really is. And we did use a recruiter, and we did exhaust our search in Canada and the U.S. And we ended up landing on someone that my father and I met 10 years prior, before his passing. Wow. And Dad actually went into the hospital early April, and Dad and I were scheduled to be in the U.S. and meet this individual mid-April. And so I continued to go down to the States and meet Dan. And I said, Dan, you know what? Our situation's changed. We obviously have to go through the search process, but I might need that wingman, and wondering if you would be interested in the job. So there's not many people in Canada that have managed wholesale distribution at a senior level that have both sales, procurement, operations, and understand the business in all its facets. So I think from a leadership perspective, that empowerment and giving, we're trying to give clear direction and share the strategy in which we want to accomplish, and let our team kind of control that direction as opposed to micromanage.
Now, is Dan kind of in your same age range? Was he between you and Dad in age? Where is he in kind of seniority and experience?
He would be between Dad and I, and I just to kind of boost his ego a bit, I'd say he's closer to my age, but
we didn't get too specific with that, so I'm sure Dan will be fine with it. So I guess you felt very comfortable then, and passing along to him a lot of the operational responsibilities. He came from the industry, it sounds like, or similar industry. Yeah.
There was a lot of eyes on that first year or two.
Can imagine.
And you know what? In family business, sometimes you have to go with your gut, and my gut was telling me that Dan had the expertise and he's excelled in the role, and I think the organization has responded as entrepreneurs and as family business. You got to stick to what you're good at. So
that's right.
I think from a strategic sales and kind of directional perspective in the business, maybe my strong points are on that side, and Dan has more day-to-day leadership expertise than I would, and so it makes a good
combination. Yeah. And he's been in place now for a couple of years. I mean, when did he come in now?
He came in September of 2018.
Okay, in 18. Okay, so fairly soon after. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Terrific. Let's talk a little bit about culture. You're, again, third generation family company. What's kind of unique or unusual about Wallace and Carey? How would you describe the company culture?
I would say when I look at our culture across the organization, it's one of family. And I've got there's some teammates that have been with the organization longer than I've been alive.
Yeah, that's great. And then their cousins and brothers and husbands and wives,
potentially. Right. And so when you have that history of both alumni that associate themselves with Wallace and Carey, as well as current teammates that have that longevity, combined with new teammates coming into the organization and challenging that status quo, you've got to enjoy the people you work with, and you've got to have that openness for feedback. And as you joked earlier, I encourage everybody in the organization to reach out and give us that constructive feedback, because it's the
second invitation. Team member, second invitation.
it's the only way to learn what's working and what's not working.
Absolutely. So, and what do you do to propagate that culture? Is there certain habits that you use, or methods in which you communicate with folks to make sure people remember the importance of family and what Wallace and Carey stands for?
Yeah, when Dad started years and years ago, every January he would go across the country and shake hands with the teammates, and obviously traveling across the country in today's environment and just shaking hands is something that's a little tougher than it used to be.
Of course.
So we would call those roundups. And so twice a year in 2018-19, once I took over as CEO, we would go and sit in small roundups with our teammates and just talk about the business and share where we're headed and give an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback. And I think that's celebrating our teammates and taking the time to share our strategy and our successes is an important part for our organization to understand where we're going and how we're trying to keep our business on the right foot. I think I wake up every day and talk about the teammates or think about the teammates that depend on, or the families that depend on us for a living. And when you're making decisions with that in the back of your mind, it's very important that how we make decisions, we put that mission statement of fair and equitable treatment for both our teammates, our suppliers, and our customers at the forefront.
During these COVIDian times, how are you doing the roundup? Are you doing Zoom town meetings that are similar to that, or have you kind of paused that, or have you been back now maybe meeting with folks, given that we are progressing through this?
You know what? We very much but we chose to respect the kind of the restrictions and travel
Of course.
suggestions. So we haven't been able to be in person doing the roundups. We've utilized technology to do videos and push information out to our teammates across the country. But we've really had to lean on in each one of our warehouses, we have a management team. We've really leaned on them to be that touch point with teammates. And we utilize a system called Big Five where we try to ask the teammates how they're doing both personally as well as at work. And I think if as leaders, we didn't have that emotional check-in with our teammates during these times, it's been difficult on everybody for a variety of reasons. And we've got to make sure we stay engaged with our teammates on a personal level,
of course,
so that they can excel on a work level and excel in the things that they're pushing to accomplish.
How many total teammates across the country today?
We always say well over 500.
And still hiring. I mean, through COVID, given that logistics is, particularly in the food business, is important. Have you continued to hire? Did you have to kind of freeze for a while, or what does hiring look like over this last period?
You know what? It's ebbed and flowed. So the theater business is a big piece of our business in Canada, and obviously they've shut down over the last 12 months. Hopefully in the next few weeks here, they can push to get open and service the customer, but that's been a big hit to us. Grocery and retail business and food service have all been affected differently. Of course. Through government support and those types of things, we've been able to keep majority of our teammates employed during some of the high challenges of COVID. And now we're coming out of COVID, I think, stronger than we went into it as we grew into different markets. As our revenue eroded a bit, we were forced to go after some business, and we've been successful pivoting into different industries during COVID.
Right. Yeah. Pat, what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
I think it's attitude. We use a term GWC, get, want, capable. And
like that.
If you want to be successful, then we can give you the capabilities to be successful. And so I would say hire for attitude and teach for skill.
Yeah. I always used to say when I was on the operations side, give me an ounce of passion for a pound of brains, right? We can teach you pretty much anything we do in this business, but you got to want to do it, got to be excited about it.
I might steal that one.
I give it to you. Give it to you. Well, Pat, you've been very generous with your time. We've got a couple of last questions. You talked about kind of, coming out of COVID, post-COVID. I've heard others say, we're kind of a new normal, and, this will probably be with us for a while. We'll probably be taking COVID shots along with our flu shots. But, do you see some major changes in the business, specifically for Wallace and Carey moving through this? And what does life look like as we hopefully not maybe necessarily get to the other side, but that, manage in a world that's going to be very different moving forward?
Yeah, a lot of people have used the phrase "a new normal." I like saying it's a new dynamic. And I think,
I might steal that one.
Yeah, I think society over the last 12 months, there's a lot of positives, obviously a lot of negatives, but there's some positives you can take out of this situation, like time with your family and those types of things. I went from being on the road 150 days a year to I haven't flown in 12 months. And so exactly. I think as we come out of COVID, there's an opportunity to challenge that status quo and push to
more balance.
Yeah, more balance and not be afraid to express the emotional or mental side that can be difficult on a lot of people. And if we can't lean on each other, then we're not going to be successful.
Yeah. No, it makes good sense. Well, lastly, what career and life advice, Pat, would you give to someone who maybe has their eyes on the corner office and maybe specifically is in a family business, right? And, maybe they're not the number one child. Maybe they're in the middle like you, or maybe they're just, taking a look around and trying to figure out whether that's for me. What does it take to be successful and be the head of a family business and make it to that fourth and fifth generation, which I'm sure is on your mind as well.
Well, my kids are probably listening, so I'll say, you know what, go be a race car driver or a hockey player, and there's a lot easier ways to make a living than in a family business. It can be
so true.
It can be extremely. My father and I had some epic battles, but we stayed close and always respected and had a great relationship. So family business can be very rewarding, but you have to go in with your eyes wide open. And I think the same way as we're trying to get feedback, you've got to be able to have the tough conversations. And I think my career advice would be asking those tough questions and probing. Don't see that as a difficult thing to do. See that as the right thing to do to make sure you're making the best decisions for yourself. And making the best decisions for yourself isn't selfish. It's your life.
No.
It's it's yours to control and guide. And don't see it as a selfish move. See it as doing the best thing for you and your family.
Yeah. And the family business ultimately too, right? There's no reason to try to force a square peg in a round hole. You mentioned being a race car driver, I know facetiously, but I interviewed a CEO who did, like you, become a third generation CEO, but he took 20 years off and went into race car driving and ran a marketing company for a while and then decided he wanted to come back in the end. And he's, transformed that company strategically. So not bad advice, Pat. Thank you.
I'd be lying if you don't think about the fourth generation and those types of things, but sure. It's both sides have to be excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Pat Carey, Chief Executive Officer of Wallace Carey, thank you so much for sharing your story into the corner office.
Appreciate it, and I want to thank my family and Brandy for their support. It's been a great treat, and we've enjoyed the ride.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.